Hello, everybody. My name's Eric. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. This is going to be my first attempt at a movie review because this one is one I've been looking forward to for a while, as have most M. Night Shyamalan fans. I'm going to start with sort of a basic overview of what I thought of the movie without any specific spoilers, but after that point, I think I will get into some more specific parts of the movie and what I thought about it, but I'll warn everybody before I move into actual spoiler territory. So that'll be sort of the basic layout of the video. Again, thanks for stopping by, and let's get started.
Maybe this will all make sense if I explain who I am.
My name is Dr. Ellie Staple, and I'm a psychiatrist.
My work concerns a particular type of delusion of grandeur. It's a growing field. I specialize in those individuals who believe they are superheroes.
Good for you.
So again, I've been looking forward to this movie ever since I heard that it was in the works. I was a big fan of Unbreakable. Both The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, I think everyone would agree, are sort of M. Night Shyamalan's sort of signature movies. A lot of people would fit Signs in there as one of his best as well. I really enjoyed Unbreakable. I loved the slow pace of it and the subtle way in which it was told. I really enjoyed Bruce Willis's character. I liked the way that he kept things to a minimum, and yet there was so much depth and emotion in his character at the same time. Once the big twist happened in Split that showed that these movies were connected, I was definitely really excited along with everybody else. So, I was really looking forward to this movie. So I'd say, sort of in general, I understand why a lot of people have sort of been disappointed with some of the aspects of this movie. But that being said, I would say my overview of the movie is more positive than negative. The sort of basic critique I heard from multiple reviewers on YouTube of the movie was that the first two acts were really good and there were problems with the third act. I think I kind of agree with that, basically, but I kind of disagree in regards to what they tended to say the problems with the third act were. Generally, the way that I heard the third act described was that it was messy, or people would say that their problem with the third act was that just the direction the story went was not very good. I would say I kind of disagree with those critiques. I would say that the premise of the movie overall, I'm a pretty big fan of. I think the ways that the twists happened. I like the directions the story went. There were, I'd say, like a couple of twists sort of that happened, maybe even like two or three sort of plot twists you didn't see coming happen, boom, boom, boom in the third act. And I would say, just objectively speaking, in terms of where the story went, I like the ideas that were put forward. I like what happened. The issues in the third act, though, were the way in which those things were handled. Again, I'm not going to get into spoilers quite yet, but I would just say my main issue with it was that, like some of the more problematic movies M. Night has made, he has an issue with excessive dialogue, you might say, of overly explaining what he's trying to pull off. I think, like back with The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, he did a really good job balancing the visual aspects of the movie and the verbal aspects of the movie, you might say, the dialogue, where dialogue was only there when it was necessary, and when it came about, it was realistic and it added to the story. I think that was the case with his earlier movies, but he started to, I think, in his later movies, have these pretty complex ideas he was trying to put on the screen, and so he seemed to feel the need to add dialogue, explain what he was doing. Like Lady in the Water, for example, he had the character of the film critic in the movie, and he sort of had him there as a punching bag because he was taking heat from movie critics for some of his work before that, but he used him to sort of explain the aspect of the story you're supposed to be in and then show how he was subverting the way stories were usually told. That's sort of what happens again here in Glass, in that in this movie I felt like he had some of that balance back again, that minimal dialogue. I mean, there's plenty of dialogue in the movie, but I mean, there was a good balance of the way the story was visually told versus told through dialogue in those first two acts. But then he sort of fell back into those old ways of doing things in the third act, and I felt there was just an excessive amount of here's the premise of what I'm trying to pull off in this story. Let me explain to you through this character what's happening. And there's parts of it I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, that's pretty smart, but you don't have to tell me. I think I would have understood what was going on if you had just maybe had like one line of dialogue explaining that and just let the plot play out without explaining it anymore. And I'm explaining all this as best as I can without spoilers. But I would say some of the reason that people are divided over the end are not just what I'm talking about, but there are aspects of the story that are very, sad, and some very sad things happen towards the end as well as some happy things. And so I'm still sorting out whether certain negative aspects of how I feel about it are just because parts of it are sad, and how much of it's just because that wasn't a good place for the story to go. Looking back on it, I'm pretty happy with where the story went, I would say. And my issues are really more to do with, again, what I've said, with more the way that the plot was executed more than the plot itself. Okay, so at this point, I guess I'll start diving into some actual spoiler territory. So spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. Feel free to stop the video right here, or if you're the kind of person who wants to be spoiled early, stick around if you want. But again, moving into spoiler territory, so here we go. So basically, if you've seen the movie, you know that a few twists sort of happen here. The third act sort of starts, and you see Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, sort of really move into his criminal mastermind identity as he really wants to embrace it. He outsmarts the doctors in a really cool way. No need to overly explain that. It's totally worth seeing. And I think at that point in the movie, there was still a really good balance with the way that the story sort of told itself without too much character explanation. But then from that point on, he sort of takes on a role that he had in Unbreakable, where he's sort of saying, like, this is the part of the movie where it's kind of like a comic book in this way. And this is the part of the movie where it's kind of like a comic book in this way. And some of that's cool, but some of it's like, yeah, I get it. You don't have to tell me. Maybe that's just me. Maybe some people need that, but I think most people would be smart enough to see it. So some of it starts to feel excessive. Like right at the end of Unbreakable, it almost seems like it's pushed too far, but it's part of the twist at the end of Unbreakable. It ultimately, I think, is necessary at the end of Unbreakable, but then it sort of gets pushed over the top at the end of this movie. And again, the twists are cool, but when you explain them, they almost feel less profound. And so that's where that problem sort of starts to pick up. And then another twist, if you want to call it that, is that ultimately the main characters all die, which is sad. And like I said, this is what I was talking about before. It's like a lot of people are, I'm sure, divided over that point of the story. But are we divided over it because it's sad and we don't want to feel sad, or are we divided because it's a bad choice? I'm still sorting that out. I don't think it's necessarily a bad choice because, again, that sort of connects to some of the other twists. I sort of suspected the next twist in that the lady running the asylum there, talking to all of them, was ultimately an enemy trying to basically destroy them and destroy their powers by making them not believe in them. And if that doesn't work, then by destroying them literally. I had suspicions that was going on. Early on, I thought maybe she was working with Elijah Price, with Mr. Glass, but that was sort of debunked early on, so I let that go. And I think accidentally I let go of the idea that she was bad, So I had suspicions, but then when it came back around again, it did surprise me a little bit. And this is sort of I'd say the main area of the story where I wish they had just relied on less dialogue, in that she starts explaining her motivations a lot at that point, saying like, we can't have superheroes existing in the world, and they sort of expose this sort of organization she's a part of. As she's talking to them, she's explaining why they do what they do. And I'm like, don't tell me. It would be so much cooler. Almost like, I remember watching like the X-Files back in the day. And in the X-Files, like there's sort of this government force sort of like keeping things from everybody. And it's very silent, very in the background, but it just provokes this anger in you as a viewer that you wish they would be honest, or you wish that they would be exposed, and ultimately you wish they would be defeated, And with her and the organization, it's like, I feel like it had the potential to raise all those kinds of emotions in a cool way, but I feel like the dialogue and constant explaining of it is kind of what kills that. But again, like I said, I think I like that twist. I like that aspect of the story. I think even the sad parts that sort of integrate all of that work and might even be necessary to the story. And then obviously towards the very end of the movie, all the sort of sad things that happen sort of turn around into the final twist, where you see the master plan and how it ultimately contributes to an ultimate good. I think that's pretty cool. As a Christian watching it, there's some almost biblical elements and themes to that, and that, like, in the death of Christ, there's actually the ultimate victory accomplished by the most negative thing you can imagine. There's that sort of redemptive theme, in that there's like this ultimate defeat, which turns into the ultimate victory, as we see like Elijah's playing with the cameras and all that stuff. That's cool. Again, a very cool idea, sort of, again, adding to the fact that I like this story overall. I like the turns it takes. I like the beats as it moves. But again, that dialogue tends to just take something that's definitely smart and it makes it feel dumber, but it's not dumb. That's sort of like the constant back and forth I felt as I saw it. So overall, this is probably the weakest of the trilogy that it now is, but I don't hate it like I've seen a lot of people sort of talk about it. I disagree with sort of what some of the problems are, but I would admit there's definitely problems, and I've kind of explained what I think they are. But overall, I think it's a good, just objectively speaking, in terms of what the story does, where the story goes, and what the big picture is at the end, I'd say it's a good story. I'd say the elements of it are good. And so in that sense, my overall feeling is positive, but just the way it was finished off put a bad taste in probably a lot of people's mouth. But I'll probably be watching it again. I'll definitely add it to my movie collection because it's a worthy trilogy altogether. Unbreakable is definitely the best. Split was a great comeback for M. Night. And this one, it's like, decent conclusion, but you fell back into some of your old ways, M. Night. So keep fixing up the way you handle dialogue mainly, and get back to some more subtlety is basically my issue. I'm not terrified of sad endings, sad elements of movies. That's not my complaint. And I think for a lot of people that might be the complaint, and they kind of need to get over that and debate in their minds what they think makes up a good story. Again, I'm not saying I'm right about whether it's good or bad in terms of what the story elements are. I'm just saying that's not my main complaint. The story can go where the story wants to go, but how you execute those elements of the story is what's important as well. So overall, thumbs up, I would say, with obviously a lot of caveats. Definitely go see it. I mean, if you're watching up to this point and have watched all these spoilers, you've probably already seen it. I've ruined a lot of it. But anyways, that's my review overall. Basically a thumbs up, but definitely some exceptions to that. So thanks for watching, and we will see you all around in the next video.